What is up, Gav? Hope you are having a good Thursday. We're
All
usually
is
we're
good,
usually
Shane.
we're usually having our conversations on Monday, right?
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, it's nice
Absolutely.
to get some airtime on a podcast. But yeah, look, I wanted to get Gav on the podcast today because he is a very successful gym owner, and you have made the PT education course, haven't you? It's completely finished, and is this your first or second launch?
This is the first launch now. So the first intake is starting on May 17th. So we're really excited now to get this up and running.
Yeah, yeah. One reason I want to get you on is to, I guess, talk a little bit about, your experience of you coming through the industry to where you are today and being in a position to educate other PTs and kind of make them better and overall like improve the actual industry. But before we get into that, because I guess that's kind of maybe something we'll save towards the end of the podcast, could you give us a little bit of background as to who is Gav Butler and how did he get involved in the fitness industry? How did you get involved in training? What's your story?
Yeah. I suppose where to start with that one. My background in terms of sport is actually boxing as a teenager, and I really liked boxing. But from a skill perspective, I wasn't actually that good. Now I was pretty fit. I trained really hard. And that was kind of what I spent my teenage years doing, just training for boxing. Absolutely hated school. And if I had my choice, I would have probably left school and joined the army. So that was actually what I wanted to do. So 16, 17, mad to get out of school, but there was no way I was going to ever talk my mother or father around getting out of school. So finished my leaving cert. And so if you like training and you can't join the army straight away because at the time there was a recession, so the army weren't actually recruiting. So what's the next best thing to join the army? Let's just apply for all the sports courses. So I just applied for all the sports courses because it seemed like something similar. Finished school, of course, as I said, the army weren't recruiting at the time, so I couldn't get in. So I ended up getting strength and conditioning in Turles. It was a 4-year degree. I actually really enjoyed it, which was ironic because I hated school, but really enjoyed that course. Still wanted to join the army, but about a year into that course, and at this stage I'd already gotten like experience like coaching different teams, coaching in gyms. I was already really enjoying it, but the army so happened to be recruiting. Went through the process. I ended up getting accepted to the army, but I actually didn't take it. I had 24 hours to make up my mind, and it was either like, let's just continue what we're doing here, let's continue with the coaching, or let's go join the army. So I decided to continue with the coaching, kept getting whatever experience I could, anything coaching, working for free, working with other really good S&C coaches. I was really lucky to get around good coaches. And I just kind of kept doing that through college. When I finished college, then I got a job or two in a gym. That didn't go too well. Ended up getting fired from my first job. The longest I've held a job was about 6 months. So what do you do then? I suppose you just go self-employed. So set up kind of running PT. I actually met who's my business partner today, and Fionn, I'll talk about him as this goes on. He so happened to have he was running a physio business, and where he was renting, there was like a little box room, and I mean to say like it was literally the size of a bedroom, and that was free. So I said, hey, can I rent that? And I literally put in a squat rack. I got kettlebells. I got a punching bag. Do you remember those old dumbbells with the little spinner things
Oh
on
yeah,
it?
yeah. Like the concrete ones that you buy in Argos.
Yeah, yeah. I said them. And I essentially ran my PT business up with that for like a year or a year and a half or so. Little bits of work with teams on the side, but that was my main business. Saved up money. It so happened that Fionn, who was in doing physio in the same place as well, he wanted to open a gym. I wanted to open a gym. So by 2018, then we opened up our first gym, and I suppose that's kind of the background. We kind of scaled from there.
So I guess talk me through the process of you getting into that first gym and like at what point did you get to the point where you're like we need to open up a second location because that like taking on a gym from what I've heard from most gym owners it seems to be something that people always talk against. They're saying it's not profitable, it's not worth doing because it's just like a money drain. But your model seems to be quite profitable. It seems to be just continuing to grow. It seems like you absolutely love it because you got what, like 5 locations. So what do you think were the kind of biggest catalysts for growth from that like 1 to 2 gym stage?
So funny, the timing of it was actually quite funny. Now, before we opened the first gym, I remember reading a book called The E-Myth. Not sure if you're familiar with it, but
Yeah.
the E-Myth essentially talks about like when you're building a business, you want to build like really good systems from the start. You want to build it as if you're going to, now we're not going to franchise our gyms, but you want to build it as if you are going to franchise it. So we kind of, from reading that book, reading some of Robert Kiyosaki's, another really good book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, reading these kind of books, we already kind of had a vision that we were kind of going to go for more than one gym. But obviously enough, you got to get things at least somewhat right in your first gym before you go to number 2 or number 3. So I think we were 2 years in, and then funnily enough, COVID hit. So COVID hit, and a lot of gym owners actually, they decided to pack it in, but funnily
Mhm.
enough. But that actually gave us a really good opportunity to just think things through. At that time, myself and Fionn were largely involved in the day-to-day operations, the coaching, sales. We literally did everything. But it gave us a chance to actually think things through, and we decided to, around that time, we hired a manager. At the time, it was the first time we, hired that level of a employee. Before
Mm.
that, it was, we only had coaches, and myself and Fionn essentially did everything else as well as coaching. And the idea of hiring the manager is we were going to open up our second location, and we got our second location in a place, we live in Tipperary in Ireland, and a place called Carrick-on-Shore. We just found a unit. We went looking at it and we said, hey, let's open up here. And that's essentially what we ended up doing. We opened up in Carrick-on-Shore, and funny enough story, when we were looking at that unit, we got a call from another gym owner who essentially he no longer wanted to run a business, and asked would we be interested in essentially acquiring his business. And
Mhm.
so that's essentially what we did. We pretty much acquired that business, and COVID finished and we opened with 2 gyms. So that's kind of how that went.
It's cool that you actually applied stuff from those books that you read because I think it's very easy for people to get books like The E-Myth or any self-help, self-improvement business book, and it just becomes like, they're just reading it for to make themselves feel better that they are actually kind of doing something that could be productive, but there's the step between you reading, taking in the information, and you actually actioning it. So I think that's like obviously extremely important for anybody who's listening to this, is that like if you are reading something as self-help books, like, maybe not don't go through like 10 of them, 20 of them a year, like pick a few and actually action what you're reading there. One thing you mentioned though you got from the first book was systems. So what systems do you think are like kind of foundational from like a gym standpoint that kind of helps that business run just like so smoothly and like just provides, well, ultimately like a good kind of standard of service or product to the actual customer?
Yeah, so there's loads. Could do a whole podcast on this alone. But I think the first thing, so like we've learned a lot from our mistakes over the years, and like, having multiple sites, which we have at the moment. And I remember at one stage we used to have like different training programs in different sites, and that was just from a quality standpoint, it was impossible to manage and keep an eye on that. So I think having an overall centralized training program that allows some flexibility, of course, because not everybody is going to be able to do the same variation of a squat or a deadlift or whatever it is. But having an overarching centralized program, and not only that, but having systems in place to communicate that. So like, I think the mistake that we would have made in the past is we'd have a program, but we didn't do a good job communicating it to everybody,
Mm.
which brings me on to probably one of the most important structures, I think, for any business is a meeting structure, a meeting cadence. And that has been, a really big thing for us. We used to really do this. We used to do it informally. We used to do quarterly reviews here and there. Now we have a very good meeting structure in terms of like all the team members at different levels in the organization. They have quarterly reviews. We also have a quarterly meetup where we meet as a whole company, and that's where we kind of run through things like the vision. We review how the last quarter went. We plan out how the next quarter is going to go, so everybody knows kind of we reviewed what we've done. They know where we're going. They know what our plans are, all like that. Then in addition to that, we have our monthly meetup, our monthly company meetup, and that's essentially, it's a CPD type meetup. So for example, we've one of these next week. Dylan, who's done the training program for the next kind of quarter, he's going to go through the intention of that. In advance of that meeting, the team are going to send out feedback forms so that they can give him feedback, but also if they have any questions so that we can go through it to get everybody aligned in the training program. And then we're actually going to go through a training session together. Then in addition to that, we have our weekly company call where we essentially go through, the numbers from the week, how the performance has been, if anybody has any questions, all of that stuff. We have our quarterly reviews, all of this, monthly meetings with head coaches. I could go on here, but essentially meeting structure, I think, has been probably one of the biggest game changers for us.
Yeah, communication, I guess, like, is the foundation of like what I do as a coach, right? Like just from a online perspective. But I can imagine it's so much more important when you have multiple layers of like, people within a business. And I think one thing that you mentioned that you do there is quite cool, where like you'll have that like centralized program that like, like most people will follow through the month. Is that correct with the likes of classes? And then you kind of switch maybe to a different PT the next month. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it really depends. It really depends because the training program, it does require an overview of the different gyms, the different layouts of the gyms, which are pretty much, they're damn near the same now. So it does require a good skill set. But yeah, we've had different coaches doing it at different times. I've done it at different times. Luke Atkins, our head coach in Carrick, has done it at different times. Luke is doing it now at different times. But to give you a bit of an example, Shane, we have an overall macro cycle, if you like, and this will tie in nicely to the PT course because we're able to show them how this stuff actually works in the real world. But we have an overall macro cycle, and it's not overly complicated. It's not like sports where you need like a power phase and a strength phase and all this. It's relatively simple. So we have the overall year planned out, and then within each year there's 4 quarters. Within each quarter there's 2 blocks. The first block is a higher volume block. The second block is a heavier, more strength kind of based block. And that's pretty much it from the small group personal training side of things. Then we also have different other kind of sessions that people can book into, which is our conditioning based sessions. And the same structure there again. It's done out macro cycle. These are the quarters. At the end of each quarter, we kind of have like a testing block and stuff like that. And there's different coaches at the moment in the company that are overseeing different programs. Jody Sheehan's overseeing what we call our flow program, which is, it's largely an aerobic program where you're trying to keep your paces to be repeatable, stuff like that. We've Dylan Durney also doing Saturday Sermon, which is, to be honest with you, it's just a fun team workout where people just come in and train hard. Yeah, I hope that kind of answers the question in terms of the programming standpoint.
So you'd have some work that is driven towards getting, I guess, specific adaptations, and then some there which are just fun, right? Because I guess some people, when they are going to things like small group personal training or like classes in a gym, they're just looking to work up a sweat. But I think one thing I do think is quite important, especially if you do have repeat customers coming in all the time. Because like when I worked as a PT in FlyFit, one of the most challenging things about doing up a class is like you could be on different classes, right? So you wouldn't always be on like the same class every single day. It'd be kind of variable, and you wouldn't always have the same people coming in. So even having some kind of programming structure there over time, if you wanted to do that, to be like a kind of PT who is thinking ahead and trying to think of the people who are coming to the classes, it's kind of waste of time, Whereas I think obviously you have repeat members coming in all the time because you're likely like one of the only gyms in the area who's doing this type of stuff, right? So you can actually kind of see that person get a benefit from maybe more the higher volume blocks into the strength blocks, and over time, they're starting to deadlift more, starting to squat more, and I guess the kind of next thing alongside that is like how do you go about programming, I guess, the specific variables to keep it compact within such a tight allotment of time, right? So your class, I guess, they're about 45 to 60 minutes, something like that.
Yeah, it's a great question. They're 45 minutes, and I'm just laughing here to myself because I'm thinking back of all the mistakes that we've made. So I remember when we opened the first gym, and back then I would have done all of the programming, and because I was used to doing one-to-one personal training, this is kind of what I did. So I used to have different programs for nearly everybody to some extent. And I'd always, like, let's say somebody, if they missed the Monday and they didn't come in until Wednesday, I'd often put like squats on a Monday, for example. But if they missed Monday and they didn't come in until Tuesday or Wednesday, their day one was still, their squat was their main lift, for example. And then their bench was like their day two. So when we opened the first gym, and this was an absolute mess for everybody but me because I had it in my head, if somebody came in on Monday, they would be doing their squat program. If they came in on Tuesday, they'd be doing, and it was their first day, they'd be doing the squat program. But somebody else, it could have been their second day, and they were doing bench press. Then you get to the third day, and then it's a bigger mess again. So you literally have three programs going on at the one time. So the quality of the coaching just drops completely, all because I had this obsessive thing that, like, no, you have to do it in this order. So
Yeah.
that really doesn't work. So the way we largely program it, like we've a main lift each day. It's not always a squat, bench, and a deadlift. It could be, it could be an overhead press. It could even be a front foot elevated split squat, whatever it is. And then we have the assistance work. So it might be two supersets or a superset and a triset or whatever it is. And it's largely, I don't really like to use the term full body because no workout is truly a full body, but it will have a mix of different various muscle groups, including upper body and lower body in each workout. It's not overcomplicated. So regardless of what day you come in, you're not going to be doing the same thing. Because realistically, when you're running a business, so our service is small group personal training. We've 8 people in a session at a time in our strength-based workouts. But realistically, you cannot tell them, okay, you need to train this day, this day, this day. It's going to be largely dependent on their schedule.
Hmm. You mentioned that you've made a lot of mistakes when, like, from the early years. So I guess what are some of the, like, not only like discounting the one that you just mentioned there, but what would you say some of the kind of mistakes or misconceptions that maybe kind of newer people into your business would have when it does come to like organizing one of these class structures? I guess they're obviously gonna have like the centralized program to go off, but like, is there something that they maybe came into the kind of idea of like what a group training session may look like relative to what you guys teach?
Yeah, if I start talking about mistakes, I could write you a big list here. But like, yeah, I think a very big mistake, and this might not be applicable to all personal trainers, but it definitely is to gym owners. So one of the biggest things that I see with new coaches coming into the industry is every coach thinks they're the best coach, right? And every coach thinks that their way of coaching is the best. And then what happens then is they're not, and I've went through this myself. I used to think I was the best coach in the world, but like, I think every coach, they go through this at some stage. I think it's a phase that every coach goes through, and they're not as receptive to feedback or other ways of coaching.
Hmm.
They get stuck in a little box of just doing things their way, and every other way is incorrect. And for the gym, for in particular, what happens then is they can be a little bit more controlling. They're the only ones doing the training program. They're essentially putting themselves up on a pedestal, so the members see them on a pedestal, and then they don't value the other coaches as much. They feel like they need to coach all of the hours of the day, or the quality of the coaching is going to drop. So instead of spending time where they should be, which is team development and developing their team and helping them become better, they take on the hours of all the coaching themselves. So I think in the early days, I've definitely been guilty of some of those things, but you kind of only learn them by going through them, really.
Yeah, I think that's very, very normal at the start of your coaching journey, right? Like, you come into the coaching industry like having some level of knowledge, and you probably think, and you've gotten some level of results yourself. So as a result, you think that, okay, everybody is going to be able to just apply what I've done and get great results. And then you start working with everybody else, and you're like, okay, most people can't even squat to a box. Most people can't, use a barbell. Most people can't perform like just a dumbbell chest press, like, without like losing control of their arms. And I think that causes you to be quite like, it causes you to be a little bit more humble in what you know, because your perception, especially when you get into it, and you're a little bit more advanced, is everybody's at that level that you're at, and now you have to strip it back and like, okay, how do I actually kind of teach this person and like make the exercise prescription, the cues, like simple enough so that they know it? Because I think again, like one also kind of big mistake that like PTs will make when they get into the industry is like, especially if they've like learned like through like physiology or like anatomy, and now they're starting to use all these terms in front of the clients. They're like, I don't
I'd be
know,
guilty of that.
what's muscle protein synthesis? Like, what do you mean the vastus lateralis is weak or whatever like this? You have to think science, speak client. That's something I heard
I like that.
from Michael Goulden, who runs Integra Education in the UK. But yeah, I think it's really, really important to kind of recognize how much you still have to learn, but it's something that only comes as you get deeper and deeper into coaching. I think, the kind of where we are at our kind of where we are in our progression at the moment, we're probably at the point where like, oh my god, I feel like such an idiot because there's still so much to learn. I feel like such a noob,
Yeah, and it never
you know?
ends. And you know what I think, a lot of coaches that I see at first, especially when they're fresh out of college or whatever, they'll try and fit everybody into these rigid boxes. So like, at the end of the day, most people that get into coaching, they love training. That's one of their priorities. But then, and I've been guilty of this, we forget that that's not, Mary up the road who has 3 kids and is only doing this for her health and to prevent osteoporosis and all of this stuff. Like, that's training is not her main priority. So when Mary tells you, geez, I'm struggling with time, and we're like, what do you mean? There's 24 hours in the day. Like, we got to meet the members where they're at, and we got to be understanding of them. Because at the end of the day, we're actually the weird ones that actually love training. I think we forget that.
Yeah, for most people, it's something to just enhance their life versus it to be the focus point of their life, which
Yeah.
I've talked about it on other podcasts, but like the concept of like minimum standards is really, really important to kind of drill into people who are, in the general population group. I said that in like quotations there. The general population quote where not everything revolves around training. Like, it's something they like to do to stay on top of their health, or maybe they do have some body composition goals, but it's more of a preference for how they look versus something that they are deeply, deeply rooted to actually achieve, like somebody who's competing in a bodybuilding stage would, right? And I think, yeah, again, as for us, for PTs, for coaches, it's really important to acknowledge that, and it's something I've had to take a step back on myself from time to time. Like, there's been times where I've been coaching people and they are not living up to the standard that I have set in my head for what I think they should be doing for the goal that they have. But when I communicate that to them, and I communicate to them, right, I think you do better here, we need to dial this in, quite often I'll get back, I'm quite happy with like the level of results they're getting. I'm happy that this is going at a slow pace. It's sustainable. Like, I'm enjoying it. Like, they have no issues with it, right? But in my head, I'm like, am I not doing enough? Am I not cracking the whip hard enough? And again, it comes back to, I guess communicating with the client, like communicating with that person what their expectations are for progress, like how fast they expect to kind of be moving in the direction that they want to go, understanding all the things that they're willing to do and all the things that they're not willing to do too. I think that's really important, like understanding what somebody's not willing to give up on, right? Because it's very easy for us as a needs to be like, okay, we just need to, the fastest way to progress, right? You need to cut out alcohol. It's just going to, like, alcohol is just going to like tank your progress, or whatever kind of unhelpful behavior it is. But if somebody just enjoys those behaviors just for the sake of enjoying them, like, just nothing wrong with having, like, if you drinks at the weekend or something like that, once you're not getting trashed every single weekend, right?
100%.
But like, if somebody has that in their kind of consultation form, I'm not willing to give up my glass of wine at the weekend. Then that's just up for us to say, okay, that's fine. But like, just understand this is how it may affect your progress over time. They will probably be like, yeah, that's fine. Maybe over time that person does say then, I might cut back in the wine here because I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more progress or something like that, right? But ultimately we can't force it. And again, it comes back to us understanding where that person is coming from, what they want, what they expect, and how fast they're looking to progress.
Absolutely. I think you touched on some really key points there as well, and they're easy things to miss. So just again, coming back to the communication, and I think it's the biggest thing. I spoke about meeting structure and communications with the team, and that needs to trickle down to members as well. So one of the biggest things, like when people are getting started, and you touched on all of this, is, you know, finding out what is it that they actually want from training. What do they really want from training? And they'll often just tell you, oh, I just want to tone up. But it's our job, and it's a skill for us as coaches. It's a very important skill to learn. It's our job to actually learn how to ask the right questions, to actually get them to expand on that. Because the
Mm.
member mightn't even know that themselves, but when you ask them questions, you help them explore what it is they really want out of training. And then by finding that, only when you find that out can you actually help them with it. And then essentially it's a communication thing, and it's a you know, we often call it pre-framing, where we can pre-frame, okay, this is the steps, this is when your next check-in is going to be, these are the steps that we're going to do to help you achieve the goal, and all of this stuff. So those communication points, those touch points, meeting structures, if you like, that they're really important as well, because to get a result, it's not just about doing 5 sets of 5 on a squat or bench press or whatever it is. It's so much more than what's just on the gym floor, and you can only kind of figure that out by actually getting to know them and helping them figure out what it is they really want out of training.
Yeah, you know, you make a great point there, especially when the around like, you know, the kind of superficial surface level goal that like people set, like, you know, want to tone up, want to get healthy, want to put on muscle mass. And I guess, like, yeah, as you said, you ask a few more questions, like, okay, what does healthy mean to you? What does getting toned mean to you? Like, you know, what does that look like? What did you have to do to get there? All these things, like, it gets people to kind of think a bit more about like what that journey is going to look like, how they're going to maybe change their habits, what they're going to maybe be kind of working on kind of day to day, any kind of challenges that may kind of pop up along the way, why in the past maybe they haven't kind of reached that goal before. Because, like, you know, something I would ask people is like, if they're like, okay, I want to, like, you know, lose 10 kilos or something like that, or like I want to gain muscle or I want to get stronger. I'm like, well, what's been stopping you all this time? You know, I want to know what the obstacle is, because it's the obstacle. I like the rest of the stuff is easy, right? Like, it's easy enough. We kind of know the strategies for putting on muscle, getting stronger, losing body fat, right? Like, write it down on paper. You could just give somebody golden lists and they could do it, right? But what's the thing that what's the roadblock that they've been coming up to every single time? It's likely something to do with what that's within that list that could be tweaked, or it could be made easier for them, or it could be de-emphasized, right? Because I think, you know, you'll have people who they'll have that goal, tone up or something like that. They won't kind of investigate it any further, and they're like, okay, what do I need to tone up? Okay, I need to do a calorie deficit. Okay, I want to get toned up like the next 4 weeks. You know, I think I could do, like, you know, 1,000 calorie diet for like the next 4 weeks. That should be fine. I'd rather do 1,000 calories than 2,000 calories for the next 8 weeks or something like that. And naturally enough, that person crashes and burns at the weekend, and it's partially as well because they have kind of also taken the quick route, but they haven't also kind of understood what the parameters for success, I guess, really are in regards to what's going to be an acceptable rate of fat loss to be occurring week after week, or toning up week after week. What are the most important things that they need to do right now to actually achieve that goal, right? Because for some people, just dropping their calories out of nowhere, even though it is going to be very effective, probably isn't going to be the best thing for them. You know, some people, and you know, I've worked with them, you've worked with them. Maybe they just need to start eating more protein. Maybe they need to start being more consistent with going to the gym. Like, they're going from, you know, a training session every other week or something like that to now they're going 3 times per week, every single week for a month. And that's going to be a massive impact in regards to how that person tones up. And it's probably a lot more enjoyable than the person who just decides, okay, I just need to slash calories right down, you know? So I think, again, for us, being able to communicate that to people and be able to, again, kind of get at the what's been stopping you, that barrier. Because for some people, again, come back, like, kind of trying to bring it back around, because I realize I'm going on a tangent there for a little bit. But if that obstacle for somebody has been that the hunger, I just can't stick to the diet. It's like, okay, well, the diet's one part of the toning up process. What are all the other things that we can do well, that we can make enjoyable, make fun? They're going to have a beneficial impact everywhere else. If you improve your sleep, you're going to feel great day to day, better energy. Your hunger is going to be less. You're going to be finding it easier to stick to the diet. You're going to have better energy in your training sessions. Let's make your training sessions something that you're enjoying doing. Okay, we'll take out the exercise which hurt your knees or hurt your back, and you know, we'll kind of make the diet something that's going to be easy for you to stick to. It might not be the best quality diet in the world to start off with, but we'll make it something that you can stick to, and then from there we can make it a little bit harder as you go on. But again, it comes back to what's the obstacle you've been coming up to, and how can we kind of work around that to just make this process smooth?
Yeah, I love that. It's like you could give them 110 different things and they all work, but it's about picking the couple of things that they're going to stick to, having the timing of it right. We can always add to them over time as they ingrain these habits. But yeah, it's just picking this couple of things that they can take action on and see results on.
Gav, I want to ask you an interesting question here, right? So I guess, how come you decided to just go fully into the gym business and not go online, right? So I guess like online coaching is the sexy thing to do. I guess, like, I think there's probably less people who want to actually be a personal in-person personal trainer these days and just want to go straight to online coaching. Why did you not do that? And is there, yeah, we'll get through that question first, then I'll spiel some more thoughts out or questions.
Yeah, I suppose a couple of pieces to that. I dipped my toes in it in terms of I had a friend and I said, hey, I'm thinking of introducing an online component to the business. You're asking me all these questions. How about I do a program for you? I'm not going to charge you. Let's just see how it goes. And I just found it to be quite frustrating for me because I couldn't see him. I couldn't coach him in person. It's different. Your business, for example, you coach people that are, in general, to the best of my knowledge, you coach people that are already like quite competitive with either powerlifting or bodybuilding. They already know how to train. Whereas to do that in an online business with people that are quite new to training, I certainly can't figure out a way how to do that to a very high quality. So I just didn't feel good about it. So I just didn't dip into it any further. I actually think, and this, you might find this interesting, and some people probably won't agree with this. I actually think it's easier to open a gym than run a successful coaching business online. I really do. I think it's
Mm.
easier to coach people. It's easier to retain the people because it's essentially our job as coaches is to get people results. And I think it's easier to get people results in person
Yeah.
than it is online. Now, that's not to say that you can't do it online, but I think it is harder to do, and it's particularly harder with the general population, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I would agree with a number of those points there. Like, I think, like, I would work with some people who are, I wouldn't say they're beginners in the gym, but the people who have tried the gym in the past and it has worked out for them because they haven't had a plan,
Mm.
and I'm the person who makes them stick to a plan and try to be the last coach they'll ever need, that kind of thing. But it is more challenging, right? Because like that's one of the kind of it's one of the things, right, with like coaching people online. There is certain things that you just can't get from working online with somebody that you are going to get from working in person with somebody, right? So some of the kind of things that I simply can't get fully when it does come to working with somebody is if I'm working with a new person and they are unwilling or they are a little bit embarrassed or shy to record themselves in the gym. That's challenging because training is going to be the number one thing that they can really be doing to
Mm.
improve their body composition. Because ultimately, again, you can clean up your diet all you want, but just cleaning up your diet is not going to help you build a lot of muscle or get stronger. It's the training, right? And there's a way that you can be training well and training that you can be doing that's just ineffective, right? And time after time when I do get like videos over, like a lot of times I'm seeing, especially when new people are coming in, I'm like, okay, you can do another 5 to 6 inches of range of motion on that exercise, okay? And if they've been and there's going to be people who've never sent me videos, and that's how they're doing it, and I don't know, it's just like I don't know. And then there's also going to be the aspect of training, like too close proximity failure, right? So training hard, and that's also something that somebody's not getting the videos over. They'd be like, I've been doing the program for months and months and months. I'm not seeing the results I want to follow the diet. But then again, you can't, if you're not seeing the videos, it's very difficult to know, okay, well, this person could be again doing the exercise with like 1 inch of range of motion, or they could be doing with like 10 reps in reserve. And it's like you just don't know. Like you have to kind of
Yeah.
take their word. And the longer I've been doing this, the more I have like over time just been more stern with people, to be honest. Like at a case like when I was early doors, I didn't want to, I guess, badger people too much for it, for the sake of being annoying. But it's like it's probably more annoying for them if they just don't get results and they're spending, all this
Yeah.
money month after month, then
Desperate
if just like
results.
me being like, here, send me the videos, like, and just like reminding them the importance of it. Then as well, there's even just like the small things, like, the angles, right? So naturally, if somebody doesn't have a tripod, you'll be getting all the crotch shots when it does come to, the bench press, or like, I've had people put their phone on the ground when they're squatting, and it's like you're getting like teabagged rep to rep. So there is that, but then there's also, as you mentioned there, right, the in person element there. You're able to control the whole session. Really, you're able to get as much out of that person as you want, and you're able to correct exercises in the moment, right? So even when I do get videos over from people, I'm correcting them pretty much after the fact, right? So then they have to, like, they'll have the cues. They'll try to have to remember them for next time, for the next time they're in the gym, and that works well for some people. But for some people, that'll just go in one ear out the other. And again, that's just like the variability, I guess, of the online setting. And I guess that does kind of come down to, there's elements of where I'd say it's easier. It can be easier in both settings to a degree, right? To get results either online or in person. I think in person has a massive control, a massive ability to get people the results through the training side of things. But without, I guess, I think you kind of model where you had like people also doing some kind of check in as well, where they're trying to
Mm.
monitor like things like sleep, like lifestyle habits, nutrition would be great. And it's something that I tried to do when I was working as a PT myself, although it was just challenging because I was doing like yeah, it was just messy. I didn't really have great systems for it. But from my point of view, online, I can have great control or great kind of oversight of somebody's nutritional habits, their sleep, their stress, all this kind of stuff to manage things that way. So again, it does come down to the level of person who's coming to you as well, as you did mention there. Like again, it can be very right. Like there's going to be some people who are going to be new to the gym or new to the coaching in general. They sign up an online coach, and they find it very difficult to get results because it could just be too overwhelming, or they're just going to be somebody who actually just needs hands-on in-person stuff. Because you know yourself, right? Like you've played sports, I've played sports. Anybody I've coached who's played sports, they usually take the gym like a duck to water. They're just able to do this stuff. They're able, and as well, they're able to train really, really hard. You do boxing, right? And like I did rugby. You played rugby as well, didn't you?
No, I would have done a little bit of coaching for S&C for rugby teams, but I didn't
Yeah.
actually play. I'm a big rugby fan now, but I've actually never played it.
Yeah, but like, when you play stuff like that, right? Team
Mm.
sports or playing rugby back in the day, there was no questioning the coach. There was no questioning
Yeah.
my coach, my rugby coach, right? Like at all. Like, through like under teens up to almost senior level. You just did what the coach told you. If he told you to run 10 laps, you ran 10 laps. You
Oh,
maybe complained a little bit, but you did them, right? Everybody else did them. And no matter how hard stuff was, how much things hurt, you just did them. You didn't question it. And I guess there's an element that comes to that when it does come to coaching too, or training, right? Because, if you're able to push that level of discomfort in a training session, you're probably going to reap more benefits because you know what it feels like to like exert yourself. Whereas like for some people, and you see this when like, you're just observing in the gym and people just stop a set when it becomes uncomfortable. It's like, why do you stop? It's like, oh, well, it started to burn. It's like, keep going. Like, keep fucking going. Like, like there's a big element to it. But anyway, I'm after going on a massive tangent there. So
no, well, I will say this. I've
again,
massive respect for anyone that builds a successful online business that gets people results because I honestly think it's hard to do. Now, as you said, there is pros to it. I think what the online coaches do really well is they have check-in systems, and we try and take some of that and apply it to what we do because I think that that's a really important piece as well. But one thing that I will mention that I do think that where a lot of personal trainers coming straight out of a course go a little bit, they see all of these online trainers, they see these people on laptops off in Dubai that are online coaches, and they think that that's the life that they want, so they skip the step where they actually learn, actually do coaching in person. I think it's vital before setting up an online coaching business to actually learn how to coach in person, because if you can't learn how to communicate, connect with people in person, and obviously enough how to correct technique and all these other things, you're going to have a damn hard time doing that online. So I think that's a very important step too, even to be a really good online coach.
Yeah, no, it is vital. It's definitely something that I am grateful that I made myself do. Because like even before, like once I got my PT qualification, I did then like, I was like put up a topless picture of myself as you would, and I was like selling online coaching here as like charging like 50 € or something like that at the time, and had like one or two people sign up, and I was giving them these plans again, as I talked about at the start of the podcast, where like, I was kind of just like, okay, this is like basically the training program that I've been following. And, then I remember going into FlyFit and they're like, oh, do you mind if you come in and do a training session? I was like, yeah, come on. Came in and I was like, oh my God, this person does not know how to train. Like they don't know how to do these exercises in general. I've never seen any videos of them doing, because I didn't even think to ask them to send me videos of them exercising. And I was like, okay, like yeah, like this is a kind of a learning, like a teaching point for me here to be like, okay, I need to actually learn how to train people, like, properly, or write proper programs, right? Because like even PT qualifications, like the general ones, or the one that I did anyway, didn't like give a great amount of like kind of programming for exercise really, or it wasn't like too good. It was more so like they emphasized way too much the class, how to teach a step aerobics class. How important is teaching step aerobics really? Because especially like if you go to work for a big box gym, they are going to teach you how to teach their classes. Like when I was working with FlyFit, I remember we did like a 4 hour spin workshop, which is mostly on the bike. And at the end, they had to deliver a session, and that was
Fun.
horrific, so, um, but back to the point of, people seeing the online coaching lifestyle as, being this lavish thing where you're living on the beach and, sipping cocktails and shit like that. Like, I've been working as an online coach for like the last 5 years now, and I spend the majority of the time in my office. Like,
It's work. There's no doubt.
yeah,
If you do it right,
you're
it's
doing
work
an office
like
job.
anything else.
Yeah, like if anything, I actually would love to have a bit like some hours in the gym, like right now, just based on the fact that like it's lonely. Like nobody talks about like how lonely it can be when you're doing online coaching, right? Because like I'm lucky that like obviously my partner does it too. But even like we'd be living in the same house. She'd be upstairs, I'd be in my office, and we could not see each other for like 8 to 9 hours of the day because we're working, and one of the big benefits of when you're working in person with people is you're in person with people, you're socializing. I would talk to my laptop for like 10 hours a day and I just feel worn out. And like, I feel like I haven't even, like, I obviously have done something, but like, you get to the end of the day, you're like, I just feel, yeah, I feel like I haven't, like I haven't, obviously haven't socialized, but it's not the same feeling to when you're like working with people. I used to love like working in FlyFit and like, get a good buzz off like, some of the clients I was working with, like, I had like a really good relationship to them. And then you're like, okay, gotta go online now. We're gonna work on my laptop, gonna have all this freedom. And then that goes. And then also, if you're somebody who is very poor with your time, the online coach is not gonna suit you. If you're working for yourself, you are you can be the subject, you can be the master of your own demise, because you have a free day essentially now, and you need to decide how you're going to structure it for like maximum efficiency, right? And that can go arseways very, very quick and can turn into you essentially getting nothing done through the days if you're somebody who's like a serial procrastinator, or you're always on TikTok, or you're always on Instagram or something like that. Because yeah, like ultimately, like structures is so important when it does come to running a business. I'm sure that's something that you can attest to, considering like your days are usually quite manic with your 5 a.m. starts and 10 p.m. finishes.
Yeah, you got to, as you said, especially when you're working for yourself. Like there's nobody there to say you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do that. You got to create that yourself. So regardless of the business that you're going into, you got to be pretty good at knowing how to prioritize your work and essentially actually getting shit done.
Yeah, and as well the fact that when you are working online, you're competing against everybody in the world. You're not
Yeah.
competing against the next gym owner in your locality or the other PT on the floor, right? Because if you work on a gym floor, you are just competing against other PT that's there, right? That's it. You're not competing against anybody else. If you work online, you're competing against everybody, right? So you have to really have a presence on social media. You have to keep that up continuously. It's a job in itself, and yeah, it's something that you'll just essentially never not have to do. It probably, I think, the social media side is like the side of this job that probably stresses me out the most, because it's like when I'm doing a check-in, it comes naturally to me, because it's, well, for most part it's prompted, right? So you have, the person's questions, you have their feedback, and you're able to kind of give like some of your own feedback based off that, and some guidance there, right? You have prompts. Whereas like, social media, of course, like you could have like, go into ChatGPT and ask for, some kind of topic suggestions, but at the same time, when you're creating something like that from scratch, like it almost kind of needs to come from a place of being creative versus a place of, for me at least, just being something that's thrown together, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Like I think ChatGPT has its place, but ultimately I think you need to be the creator of the ideas. ChatGPT can
For
just
sure.
spice it up for you, like just make it sound a little bit more crisp. But yeah, I think the online coaching, it's sold as this lavish thing to do, and people don't realize that you've all this other work to do. And as you said, having skills in terms of marketing and social media is a large part of that too. I think it's important to personal training in general, to be honest with you, but definitely in the online world, you got to be really good at that stuff.
Yeah, especially with like people now seem to be leveraging so many different platforms. Like you have, I'm doing this podcast, you have email, you have Instagram, you have TikTok, people doing YouTube now, and it's like, that itself like almost requires a decent proportion of your week taken up just doing that type of stuff, right? Whereas if you're like, oh, I don't know about like, learning all these systems, I don't know about like learning like about starting a podcast, or even just putting myself out there on Instagram, and online probably is not going to be for you right now, and you're probably better off going in person. And like, I think it's so wrong of people to think of it, like in-person PT to be like a lesser route. Like, yeah, for sure, you have to be in a specific location for specific hours to give your time for money, but you're giving your time for money anyway. Like when you're sitting at your laptop all day, and like there's other trade-offs too. Like, again, just a social connection there. One thing I miss, right, is like not being part of a team. Like you have your entire company there. You can have your Christmas parties. You have your company events, and they're fun. Like, people remember those. People make friends from those, like lifelong friends. It's just myself here, right? And like that's gonna be the exact same for a lot of PTs too. I don't know, like in your company, like say for example, if a PT is like I'm going on holidays, or or anything like that, would they like get like holiday time off and they're still kind of paid a wage, or how does that work?
Yeah, so they get paid. There's holidays like any business, but even like there's flexibility there. For example, the powerlifting competition there last week, Rachel was competing. I'm pretty sure she was supposed to be rostered on that Saturday, but she just swapped it with one of the other coaches. So there can be this type of stuff going on where one coach swaps a shift with another coach. So it's really, yeah, it's a real team effort, really, to be honest with you. And from our
Mm.
end, then we don't even have to, there's not much work or management there for us because the team kind of sorted amongst each other, which is great because there's a great culture there.
Yeah, yeah. Once somebody's on shift. Um. Okay, so I guess we covered the online side there, the online versus in person, pretty well there. But I guess like the next thing I want to talk about is the development of the education course. So I guess why did you feel it was necessary to kind of develop this qualification?
Yeah, so good few reasons really. First of all, or where we're at the moment, we've five gyms at the moment, and we have two more opening this year, and we're going to have more after that. And our biggest constraint really for scaling our business is hiring. And I'm always moaning about it. I'm always giving out that, geez, it's so hard to find good coaches and it takes ages and all like this. So instead of continuing to moan about it, we decided to put together a PT course. And the plan for that course, yes, if you just have a general interest and you want to come and join the course, that's fine. But we're being fully transparent with why we're running the course. The reason we are running this course is it's a hiring funnel for us we plan on bringing in coaches. And look, it's a base level PT course. You're not going to know it all just from doing this course. It's a base level PT course so that you can enter into the industry. And our plan is, from the course, identify the best of them, and hopefully, if they're a good fit, and by the time they get to the end of the course, we'll have pretty good idea as to what they're like as a person, and if they're a good fit, more of an idea than what we'd get from a 1 hour interview. And from then, when positions open up, we can look at these people in terms of for potential for hiring, and even internships before hiring and so forth. So like an example of a girl in our company, and this is actually really cool. Heather is her name. And she started off as a member in one of her gyms. Now, we didn't have the PT course at the time, but she started off as a member. We kept telling her, she was interested in the industry. We kept suggesting to her that, you should give this a go. And so she went and did a basic enough, she did a PT course, got a qualification, and then Luke Atkins, the head coach in Carrick-on-Shore, and the coach that's working with him as well, Kieran, they took her under their wing, gave her an internship, gave her coaching experience, got her coaching, gave her feedback on it, kept working with her. A position came up in that gym where we were hiring. We gave the position to her, and she's been there since, and she's been bossing it ever since. So really, qualification, we do need a qualification to get into the industry, but we also need coaching experience. And as I said, for us, it's a hiring funnel. And with the practical end of the course, and we're being fully transparent with this, we're going to give people opportunities to coach in the group, all like this, and we're going to teach them some of the systems that we have in our business, how we coach small group personal training, how to coach to a group of people, and all like this. Again, it's an entry level into the industry, but it's something that we're really excited about, and it's going to open up the doors for us for creating that funnel for hiring.
What is something that you think kind of like current PT qualifications kind of miss out on that your course is going to do a little bit better?
I think, I think one of the biggest things I think about coaching in general that I think it's missed in courses, and this is nearly all courses, but it's learning how to, it's the simple things, it's the psychology end of things, it's learning how to do a consultation when somebody goes in so that you can have a conversation with them about their goals, picking up on that information. It's learning, we often talk in the company about learning to be a host. So being a coach isn't, at least for us in the group setting, being the coach doesn't mean that you need to be the center of the attention all the time. Being a coach means you need to be a good host. You need to bring somebody into the door. You need to be able to help that person connect with other members. You need to get them ingrained into the community. You need to instigate conversations between members so that you're creating that environment. These things I feel is missed. I also feel another thing I often talk about, and this is coming back to the technical end, is coaching what you see. So it's one thing knowing, like if you're talking through, a deadlift and you're talking about all these cues, let's get your hips back, your shoulders down and back, let's get the tightness in your lats. Like when you are demonstrating exercise, people don't really hear those cues. You need to just give them the bare minimal, get them moving, and you actually need to have those cues in your arsenal, but actually be able to learn how to communicate them and communicate it differently to different people and actually get them moving better. And it's not a matter of knowing all of these cues, it's correcting what you see. So these type of things, I think where we're at an advantage of in relation to other courses is we're actually in the industry, we're hands-on, we are coaches, we run gyms. We're not just lecturers that are lecture every single day, but don't actually coach in the real world outside of the students. So I think that's where we're going to be a little bit stronger, and I think that's what's going to, because like when we go to the market to hire, like we'll hire whoever's best, whether they come from our course or if they come from elsewhere. But I do believe that from our plan of how we're going to deliver the course, those people are going to be set up nicely in terms of they're going to know a lot of this stuff, or at least have a good entry point of this stuff. And I think people that go through other courses, that's brand new to them. They haven't even heard of it.
Yeah, like as I was saying earlier on, my course didn't do a huge amount on the actual practical side of things. Like I think, and even like the bar for doing a successful training session was pretty low, or like even if you weren't giving a cue from their set of cues, that was, no, you couldn't do that. You have to cue it the way they were telling you to cue, right? I think there's probably thinking like, and this is from talking to other people who've done other qualifications. There's a lot of like arbitrary rules or arbitrary standards that like a lot of other qualifications have. Whereas like, you know, as you're saying there with the likes of like how you'd approach somebody in the gym, right? And like, you know, you're actually coaches, so you actually do the stuff day to day, you see what works. It's like if you say a cue and it gets the person to do what you want them to do, it's an effective cue. Doesn't matter what it sounds like. It just matters that they are doing it and that it clicks for them. There's, you know, like there's different like ones that you use for like a deadlift. Like a very common one is like, you know, squeeze lemons under your armpits, right, to like engage your lats, or, you know, protect your armpits. Like somebody's gonna try come up and tickle your armpits, right? You're gonna clamp down on them. Again, you're getting the kind of same thing. That worked for like a lot of people, but then you could take to a more experienced trainee, engage your lats, and they'll know what you mean, you know. And I think again, it's like trying to bridge the gap between what the person in front of you is probably going to understand, and you know what is going to achieve that desired result, versus it just being something that is in like the textbook. Like, you know, one of the common things you'll see in a PT course is your knees shouldn't go over your toes, right? And like, you know, if you question that,
Yeah.
you'll just be told, well, that's just the way the course is taught, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's actually something, that, I want to get across to the students as well. Like, so to get PT qualifications, regardless of where you go, regardless of what you read, information, it's updated constantly. I mean, like, you would have read Eric Helm's book years ago, and the way he would have quantified volume then, which was, I believe, total reps, and
Yeah.
that's different to how he does it now. So the point that I'm trying to get across there is like stuff updates all the time, and governing bodies that run courses, sometimes it takes them a little bit longer. So like just because a scientific paper came out today, that's not going to be embedded into the course by tomorrow. So it can take a little bit of time. So we want to take this information, but we need to, we need to be a student for life. We take this information, it's how we interpret it. You can interpret a research study in loads of different ways. So we always need to be learning. I think one of the biggest things with coaching, you mentioned your course didn't do a huge amount on the practical end of things, and the practical end that they did do was based off specific coaching cues. I think coaching cues are actually overrated because different coaching cues work for different people.
Yeah.
Again, you've got to correct what you see. So a big thing that we'll be doing on the course, and I've actually done this before, I ran a mini course actually for PTs, but the students are coming onto the course, they will actually be coaching within groups, kind of like you would do in our gyms. You'll be coaching within groups, and we'll be giving them live feedback in terms of how they coach. Because how you coach and how you communicate, that's what's more important than knowing these different cues, knowing how to use tonality, knowing when to bring your voice up, bring your voice down so you don't sound boring when you're demonstrating an exercise. All of these different things are really important as coaching, and that stuff is often missed. So and again, it's the same for us. I'm talking about, as a coach, you need to correct what you see. As I suppose a lecturer now, I need to correct what I see with the students. So getting the students actually coaching gives me an opportunity. I can't tell you right now what feedback I'm going to give them. It's going to completely depend on how they coach. Depends on how they're coaching in front of me, and that'll determine the feedback that I'm going to give them. I can't read that in a book. I don't have a coaching cue of what to give them. I need to see how they perform and what feedback they need. And I think that's going to help us, at least, again, coming back to what our intention is, develop coaches that we can hire.
I think you mentioned you know, the coaches need for continual evolvement, and I guess it is one of those things that like anybody who does a PT qualification, like, or any qualification for that matter, it doesn't mean like you're an expert in the topic. Like, expertise takes years and years and years and years and years and years to get right before you're at a position where you could even be confident enough to call yourself an expert, right? You have the classic like Dunning-Kruger model is like the peak of Mount Stupid. So the peak of Mount Stupid is probably you getting that qualification, really, you know.
Yeah.
And then as you start coaching, then you're going to go into the valley of despair, which is like the bottom, where you're like, oh my god, there's so much here that I thought I knew that I don't know, and I don't think I'll ever be in a position where I know enough. And then over time you get to a position where like, okay, definitely feel like that's like essentially the point of enlightenment on the actual chart, and the point of enlightenment essentially is I know enough about this specific topic, but I can acknowledge that there's limitations to what I know, and that I still have things that I can continue to learn and change my mind on. And I guess that's a really important thing to be able to recognize as a personal trainer, is that like the way you coach, if the way you're coaching from now to 5 years in the future is the exact same, you are probably doing something wrong, because there's going to be things that are changing, and there's going to be updated thoughts or better ways of doing things. And if you can't like look back 5 years ago and say, okay, I thought wrongly about this, or I should have done better by this person, I think you probably haven't grown up, because it is just it's an evolutionary, that's not evolutionary, it's a process of continually evolving, and we should always be trying to sharpen the sword, because people are paying us good money every single month to improve their health, to improve their fitness or whatever. Like, it's our due diligence. Pretty much every other, like if you work in a corporate job, or you're working in, like if you work in a medical field, right? So people in medical fields, like they have to go to conferences, they have to do continual like professional development. We as PTs should be doing that too, right? Like, we as coaches should be doing that too. Just because a lot of us work for ourselves and can spend money on whatever we want, like the designer Louis Vuitton handbag or the pair of Balenciaga shoes, that probably hasn't benefited anybody. Like, it's not even a good fashion choice. Come on, but like you could be using that money to just become a better coach, be better at your job, and do better by the people that are paying you. I'm very grateful that I came across people who kind of pushed that narrative early on, because it did kind of push me towards doing that too. And I'm grateful for doing it, because I think, again, like a point that I think a lot of us should be getting to as coaches is like trying to like question our thoughts, or being able question our thoughts and our models or ways of doing things, but also being able to critically evaluate information that comes in, because the fitness industry, like no other, is, and especially like because we're so kind of closely tied into health, and then like the medical field, and like stuff trickles down from there into our industry, and there's so much kind of bullshit that comes out from that. And like you'll be coaching people, and like they'll come at you, be like, oh, what do you think of like this herb or this tea or something that I could be using for my fat loss? And you're like, this is bullshit. Like, or like they're coming at you with something they heard on Huberman Lab, and you're like, yeah, that's bullshit. Like, but because you've kind of went through the process of learning over time, and learning how to learn, and learning how to think, and learning how to question things, learning how to evaluate information, you're able to spot bullshit without delving into it too much, right? Whereas if you don't, and your level of education is just watching a YouTube video, listening to a podcast. Like, listening to a podcast is surface level information, right? It's not deep learning. Or like reading an Instagram post, swiping an Instagram carousel. You are always going to have surface level like knowledge, and you're not going to be able to kind of poke holes in the information that you currently know and believe, or other information that comes at you.
Yeah, I love that. One of the key questions I always ask in interviews is I'd say, so what, in recent times, what's some recent content that you've consumed that you feel is going to make you a better coach? And you'd be surprised the type of answers that you'd get. Like, you would literally get, oh, I follow Jeff Nippard on Instagram. I follow this person on Instagram. And then I'd ask, have you read any of his books? Is there a recent book that you've read? And then they're like, oh no, I'm not really a reader. And I know that this sounds, really biased, but I really cringe when I hear somebody say, I'm not really a reader. I really think that that's just an out. Because, like, fair enough, if you're surrounded with, like, Eric Helms, Dr. Pack, Lane Norton, if you somehow are surrounded with these people and can learn from them there in person, fantastic. But very few people have that privilege. So what's the next best thing? The next best thing is, like, read their books, read some of their research studies, whatever it is. If you're not doing that, I really think, and it doesn't mean, I get that there's times in your life where that can be hard to do, but if you go a whole year without doing any of that, I think you're really leaving yourself behind in the industry. So I think that thought of, I'm not a reader, it's really a limiting thought that I really think leaves personal trainers behind. And I love, like, I'll give an example of one of our coaches, Rachel and Shauna, actually, recently enough, they like would ask me, what book would you recommend, or what would you recommend? And I'll set them back a question and be like, well, what is it you're trying to learn? And then if they tell me what they're trying to learn, I'll say, okay, for Rachel, it happened to be a course that I did, and I gave her access to it. Sebastian Orb's course was to do with programming stuff. For Shauna, it was, what book did I give her? Actually, it was Eric Helm's book. So this type of stuff, like, if you're not doing it, you're leaving yourself behind. I really believe it.
Yeah, and like you can get better at reading. like like yeah,
I'm still a slow reader, but I'm better
yeah,
than I was.
yeah. Like I wouldn't have considered myself to be somebody who was fond of reading. I think like here's the thing, like with reading, and I guess like this is just opinion, people. So like take it for a fact, but
Yeah, I'm very
reading.
biased, I know.
Well, I know, like reading, it just takes more time investment. Like watching a video or reading an Instagram post, like unfortunately because people's attention has gotten so sparse, it's harder to do in general, right? Like it's easier to watch a video on YouTube because you could just watch it. You don't have like you can just listen to that person saying stuff, but like a lot of the times people are kind of half watching these things. Like they're probably watching the video while they're eating their dinner, or they're like or while they're making the dinner, or while they are on their phone or something, right? They're not like actually sitting down watching it and be like, okay, I'm taking notes, right? Because the difference between you sitting down and listening intently is if it's a lecture and you're taking notes. Because like like when you read something, okay, you have to focus so intently on it, right? Like your retention is miles better to reading. Like you would be better off reading half an article on something like the Mass Research Review than watching like a full video on Jeff Nipper's channel, right? Like obviously like Jeff is probably a bad example because his ones are so detailed and so kind of animated that it's like easy enough to say gauge. But like the level of retention that you'll get from reading it and just take and like having that time is gonna be miles better. And like the note taking is so important. Like I've got like I've got notes here on my Mac, and like I literally have like folders and folders and folders for like everything I've signed up to over time, and just have everything there. So like anytime, it's really really handy, because what happens now is like if I'm doing check-ins or something and somebody asks a question that I'm like, I've definitely read about that before, I can't remember where from, I'll just go into my notes here and I'll search it, and then boom, I've got like there's something detailed there that's going to be likely evidence based or well thought through, and I can be like, okay, like this is like from something I've kind of read in the past. This is something I've done. This is something that can work. Versus it just being again in one ear out the other. Because like there's no use. Like again, it comes back to that deep learning, right? Like watching a
Yeah,
YouTube video.
I think that's what it is. That's
Deep
what it
learning.
is for me. It's just the deep learning piece, regardless of what it's from. That's what it is. It just drives me nuts when people are like, I follow this guy on Instagram. I'm like, come on.
Yeah. It's there's more to the learning process, and I guess like look, there's an evolution to this, right? Because I think especially if people are new in the industry, I think there's going to be a pocket of people who they're like, oh, I don't want to pay €30 a month to sign up to this research review. They're like, if anything's behind a paywall, they're like, oh, I don't know, why would I sign up for that when I could just like watch it on YouTube for free, which you can do, right? Watch something like that on YouTube for free, which you can. But there's something to when you do pay for something that you're like naturally enough, you respect it more. You want to get a little bit more from it. But generally as well, you pay for something that is going to be a little bit more kind of like deeper, right? You pay for something that has a little bit more kind of detail to it. That's the like if something's behind a paywall, it's less likely that you're going to be bombarded with ads, bombarded with distractions. You're not going to be the video itself is not the video itself or the medium itself is not going to be made to distract you or kind of just keep you on a platform. It's there to just deliver that specific piece of content. And I think that part is really important. I think it's important to just get used to spending money on your education. I always say to like anybody I coach well who's a business owner or like works in the as a PT is like, it's tax deductible. Like if you spend money on an educational course, it is tax deductible. It's less tax you have to pay at the end of the year. And as well, you as a result of doing it, you get people better results. As you get better results for people, more people sign up for coaching. More people sign up for coaching, you make more money. So you spend more money to make more money. But ultimately, you're gonna be better positioned for doing it. So, yeah, I think it's just a band-aid people need to rip off.
Yeah, 100%. We're so big on CPD that in our time blocks, each week coaches have a time block for CPD. But also, I remember Fionn, my business partner, he taught it up last year. I don't want to give the exact number. I think I know it, but I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to misquote it. But he taught it up how much we spent on like education and CPD, and it was five figures. So we spend a
Nice.
lot of money on it. That was for the team. I spend in the thousands myself on it, on different courses and different business trips and everything, anything to learn. But it's so big, and really and truly, like that's the stuff. That's the stuff that will pay its dividends to you over time. Like if you pay for courses and stuff and you pick the right ones, like that will pay you back 100%.
Yeah, even from a context of, I was talking about this with a client there yesterday. Even for the context of getting to know people in the industry,
Yeah,
it's quite important, because like, look, it can be a lonely job, and it's nice to know other people who are good at their profession in industry who have a similar mindset to you. Who, like, if you meet somebody at a seminar, like, you have a good idea that they are probably somebody who wants to be the best coach they can be too, right? Sometimes those people have different skill set to what you have, and what happens is, like, over time, like, you can kind of create almost like a referral network of different coaches that just have different specialities, you know, or like, it's happened from time to time where somebody that I know hasn't been able to help somebody, so they pass them on to me, and then I'm able to help them, or just been a better fit, or somebody has not had the skill set that I've had. Like, I've had people who, maybe they're more kind of physio based, and, like, after they've kind of helped their clients, they want to get into powerlifting, and then they get on to me, and, like, if I ever have somebody who gets injured, I send them on to them. So
yeah,
it's something that, like, it's a reciprocal and, like, kind of relationship there too. Everybody wins. It's not a zero sum game, and I think you only really get that from, like, venturing out of your home and, like, into these kind of scenarios where you meet other coaches and meet other people in this industry, and ultimately a lot of times you're paying for that, right? You're paying to kind of meet these people. And even one thing that I'm very happy that I have done over time is pay for these things where, you know I heard Paul Sandell, who runs PT Project over in the UK. He said on a live call a few years back that I did, because he used to do like a weekly thing with the muscle mentors, and he said the best way to like learn from somebody or become friendly with somebody, like, in the fitness industry, realistically, is to pay them. Because, like it sounds shallow,
yeah,
but it's true. Like,
yeah,
if you go to something like that, right? Like, I've went to the muscle mentors live thing, and, after, go out for dinner with the lads, and you're chatting with them and stuff like that, and you make a connection with them, and, like, now, if I have a question, I could just throw a message on Instagram or something like that. Whereas, like, in the past, that Instagram message may have gone, like, just ignored or something like that, right? But because I've invested in their services over time, they're more likely to kind of reach out, help me if I need some help, versus somebody who's just a random. And I can say, okay, I can trust them if I have any kind of issues, questions, or even if I wanted to refer people on, that, like, I know that they're good guys and that they're good at what they do, right? And that kind of stems across all kind of, like, in person educational kind of things that you will do too.
yeah. Well, it shows you're serious, doesn't it? When you invest in their services, it shows that you're serious. So they're much more likely to help you out, I think. And I do feel one of the best ways to learn is surround yourself with people that are further along the tracks than you are in whatever you're trying to do. That is, in my opinion, that's better than any deep reading or anything you can do. Get around people that have been there and try and learn as much as you can from them.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see how they operate, and, see how you must operate yourself to get there one day. Anyway, Gav, look, it's been a pleasure to have you on. I guess, is there any kind of closing thoughts that you want to kind of leave the audience with, or is there anything more you want to talk about, say, in regards to the kind of PT course? Because I know it's going to be closing next month. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's starting 17th of May. We're only taking 15 on because we want to keep the quality of it high. We've 11 spots filled so far, so it's filling up quite quickly. We will plan on doing more intakes after it. But I think we've pretty much covered it all, Shane. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Do you want to let people know where they can find out more about you and your services?
I suppose for the gym side of things, just type into Instagram TaylorMade Coaching. We'll come up there. There's probably an underscore or two there. I can't remember the exact handles. For myself, it's gavin.tailormadecoaching on Instagram. And then for the course, it's TaylorMade Coaching Education. But if you type any of them into Instagram or one of them, you'll see the other ones will be linked in different videos and stuff like that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Gav. I will make sure to link all of that into the show note description. And if you at home have enjoyed the podcast, make sure to go over and give Gav a follow. Look in, if you're a budding PT, maybe consider signing up for his course if he still has spaces available when this comes out. And if you have enjoyed the podcast, make sure to leave me a rating and review on the podcast platform you're listening on. And we will catch you in the next.